All right, let's go ahead and kick this off. First off, thank you everyone for taking the time to spend your either morning, afternoon, or evening with us. We really appreciate it. We believe you'll leave this webinar with at least a few key insights about what CDPs are all about. If not, I certainly didn't do my job, so please feel free to follow up, share feedback with myself, the marketing team, and even my boss if you'd like. So with that said, my name is Amish Sheth. I am the VP of Solution Engineering here at LeadSpace. In about a week, it'll actually be 7 years I've been working here at LeadSpace. So, over the years, I have seen, learned, and certainly experienced a lot working with our customers, prospects, staying abreast to what's happening in the market competitively. And ultimately, it's really been about B2B companies trying to find ways to drive revenue growth faster, do it more efficiently. And it's all about doing it by being able to connect with their customers in a more impactful way, delivering better customer experiences. On one hand, a lot of the customers I've worked with over the years, have come a very far way as far as improving how they connect with their customers to drive that growth. But on the other hand, I've been in the space for about 10 years now, and some of the same fundamental problems still exist. Companies still struggle to trust their data, no consistent view of their customer, misalignment across, the organization, and that really impacts the customer experience. And, really that's why we're here today, really introducing the concept of customer data platforms to the market, and really with an emphasis on, how is a B2B CDP different from a B2C CDP? So let's go ahead and dive in. So today, in terms of the agenda, we want to cover everything from what is a CDP. There's a lot of different CDPs out there, and I think a lot of education that needs to be done in the market to help buyers, users understand what's all possible with the different flavors. And so we're going to cover that, the benefits, key use cases, all the way through to what you should look at as you determine what type of CDP might be right for your business. Ultimately, we hope you find this session informational, whether it be you're evaluating a fit for a current business initiative, learning for your role, or just for curiosity's sake. And at the end, we'll certainly save some time for Q&A. So what is a CDP? A customer data platform, aka a CDP, whether it's B2B or B2C, foundationally has three core tenets, if you will. First off is the ability to unify first-party data that's siloed within a customer's environment. That's typically, think of sales data, marketing or marketing automation data, what's happening on the website, financial opportunities / transactional data, engagement information from different activities across marketing and sales, inquiries from customer service, how they're using your guys' product, etc. It's about bringing all that data together to create that single view of a customer, so you can better understand how to engage and target your customer base more effectively. Now, in addition to that, there might be other data sources that could be sort of compiled and unified with that. On the B2C side, it's really about building these profiles from a individual perspective, because people buy consumer related products. It's not really a buying committee. Whereas on the B2B side, it's extremely important to incorporate the concept of accounts and specific buying centers within those accounts to get that full picture of a unified profile. And that's where it becomes really important to incorporate a lot of that valuable third-party data that's available. Information about people, think demographics, firmographics about businesses, what's happening socially or on the web publicly, as well as other niche insights such as competitive or in-market sort of buying activity signals. Now, depending on the type of CDP, they might have a marketplace where they make it easy to buy third-party data. Certain CDPs actually have embedded third-party data, which we'll refer to as sort of second-party data as well. That's part of their core offering. So depending on what you're looking at, you're going to find different sort of flavors from that perspective. Second of all customer data platforms offer the ability to segment those profiles and create audiences to then activate as part of different sort of campaign or outreach strategies. Now, most of them, I would say, start with rules-based segments, so you can incorporate your own logic, build segments off that underlying data in the profiles, and then activate them across different execution channels, which gets into the third component, which is the activation channels. Some platforms, when you evaluate CDPs, actually will have their own activation channels embedded into their platform. Most often, though, most connect to the other systems and channels that you are already leveraging for marketing, sales, customer service, etc. So it allows you to really connect these profiles and audiences back to those systems, so you can get more out of those investments themselves. With that said, CDPs have become a top priority and a critical company initiative for a lot of organizations. In fact, this survey that was conducted by Forrester recently to data and analytics decision makers noted 91% of organizations are either already adopting or planning to adopt a CDP to help them drive some of that transformational growth the organizations are looking for. So let's go ahead and now take a look at why it is so critical and what are some of the underlying benefits and value you can expect. In this case, we're going to focus on highlighting what we see here at LeadSpace, some of our point of view around some of the customers and benefits they're seeing. But generally speaking, these are sort of some of the core areas you could expect from any B2B CDP. Really focused on, I would say, three fundamental areas. There's sort of the business operations, driving more targeted, relevant campaigns, and then helping prioritize, the type of companies and people that are more likely to close. And you can see, some of the clients we work with here that, Salesforce and Zoom, for example, really started off on the business operations side. Salesforce in particular, it's about helping them get to that single source of truth and single understanding of the customer by being that global provider of the data they need for building and maintaining account and contact profiles. It's not a one and done sort of step. It's about maintaining these dynamic profiles over time so you can continuously understand how to engage and connect with these orgs and people. For Zoom, similar to Salesforce, it was also about that foundational piece, but it was even one step further around, with the pandemic hitting, Zoom had unprecedented demand, more demand than they could route and get to the right reps for follow-up to, try to close some of these new deals. And so it was really about understanding how account hierarchies were structured, how leads connect to accounts that really can help drive more automation for efficient marketing and sales operations to, again, qualify and get that demand to the right teams internally. From a HP and 8x8 perspective, it was really about, among other things, leveraging some of our modeling capabilities to be more precise around identifying the right personas that are ideal for them to target in various campaign strategies so they could be more relevant, get more out of those outbound marketing and sales efforts, which ultimately drove better engagement, which thus converted into even more pipeline from these key target accounts they were focusing on. And then on the Adobe and FreshBooks side here, it was really about, a little bit of what we just mentioned, but with a heavy emphasis on really trying to prioritize the demand in their funnel. So by having the ability to analyze what's worked historically, so analyzing that funnel data, who's converted, who's not, we're able to build models that allow us to then predict, what is the top 25% of the demand that's coming into the funnel, that's already in the funnel, that can drive 70% of the conversions. And by being able to do that, they can really laser focus their expensive time and resources on those highest likely to convert into opportunities. And you can see some of the benefits they've been able to realize as a result. On top of all that, a CDP from a data strategy perspective can actually help you optimize how you think about your overall spend by unifying data and tapping into the right third-party data sources you need and really helping you be more efficient to reduce overlap, limit integration complexity, so on and so forth. So as we transition into the different types of CDPs, and really want to spend this next section highlighting what are some of the fundamental differences as far as the use cases that are supported, as well as some of the capabilities as you think about the different CDPs that are out there. All right, so starting off with a homegrown CDP. So this is certainly an option that we've seen taken by a lot of organizations. It's typically an IT-led initiative where the first step is to take all that decentralized first-party data and to centralize it. Usually that's going to be in some sort of data lake or data warehouse, and that's sort of step one. The next step is to then take that data as it's centralized and use sort of rules-based approaches to unify that data to create that single view of a customer. Now, this approach could support B2B or B2C. It really depends on how they want to build this, CDP in-house and in the business they're operating in. In terms of key use cases, this is really focused around identity resolution, master data management, and enhancing business intelligence reporting in-house. A couple of other highlights to call out that you should take into consideration as to whether this approach is right for you or not is this does require more of a technical-led focus. It requires usually technical people to use the product because it's not as business user-friendly. It does provide a lot of flexibility and customization since you get to sort of develop the stack that you want the CDP to sort of deliver on. However, that does mean it does result in a lot more ongoing maintenance and resources to maintain that over time. So that's kind of the first option. The next option is the B2C specific CDPs that are out there in the market. And if you look at that in comparison to the homegrown, it's really about adding the ease of use to make this business user friendly. And with that, the two core components that are provided with the out-of-the-box offerings is there's a segmentation layer and there's an activation layer. So there's pre-built out-of-the-box connections to different go-to-market systems that allow marketing, sales, and other functions to put these audiences to work, if you will. From a use case perspective, B2C CDPs, the nature of the business is it's really about connecting to individuals to drive transactional business. And so with that said, the key use cases around unifying person-specific profiles, and then from an activation standpoint, the connectors and what they're really optimized for is top of the funnel use cases. So it's really about digital targeting, ads, and web personalization to, again, be as relevant as possible with those outreach strategies to drive conversions in business through those tactics. The third option is the CDPs that were built purposely for B2B. And the first distinction here, what you'll notice is to really get that full profile understanding of a B2B buyer and a buying committee and the org itself, usually first-party data is not going to be good enough. So you're going to need to incorporate third-party data. Oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, there's CDPs out there that offer some data with their platform, so that embedded third-party or second-party data is already available. But it's about bringing all that together to build that foundational understanding of the customers, the buying centers, and the people. In addition to that, B2B CDPs can really support optimizing some of these outreach strategies by analyzing a lot of that funnel data. In this case, we call it a buyer classification engine, but it's really about building models based on historical data to predict different business outcomes that you want to optimize against. So that could be things like optimizing the funnel as far as leads to prioritize for sales. It can be optimizing outbound tactics such as which accounts to focus on for targeted ABM programs, etc. And so in terms of the key use cases, some of those I already mentioned, but others to note, from a go-to-market strategy and planning perspective, helping you understand your total addressable market, modeling that, understanding, what segments you should prioritize and penetrate first, that's going to drive the best return on those sort of investments. how to build equitable territories so the different sellers on the teams all have a fair shot at hitting their number, and they're all getting an equal number of highly likely to convert accounts in the first place. Also, as we talk about operational scale here, B2B CDP is really built to support not just the go-to-market engagement campaigns and those strategies, but it's also the end-to-end behind-the-scenes operations that need to happen. And the more you can use the data and the intelligence here to automate that, the more efficient you can be, and eliminate some of those manual, redundant tasks that oftentimes have to take place without that automation or the intelligence to do so. All right, so as we pivot to the next slide here, I'm going to give you a different perspective. Really, instead of talking about the highlights and the key use cases, focusing on just a comparison of the different capabilities. Now, this is the point of view that we see here at LeadSpace through our experience, working with our customers, seeing what's happening in the market, et cetera. But we're also going to show you another perspective here in a moment. But as you look at the different sort of key capabilities, they're really bucketed around data and profiles, models and analytics, as well as activation. From a homegrown CDP perspective, what they really lack is there is no third-party data, right? You have to go out and you got to go buy all that third-party data you may need to supplement the profiling in that unification process. Since this is built from scratch using more IT-led approaches, the segmentation that's possible in these systems aren't necessarily business-friendly, so that can be a challenge. And then from an activation standpoint, it's really about typically building your own connectors based on how you might want to activate the CDP. And depending on if it's built for B2B or B2C, certainly that's going to vary. Looking at B2C CDPs, as we sort of illustrated earlier, really built from an activation standpoint for top of the funnel use cases, so ads, website, as well as email marketing. Because they're really focused on people, the concept of companies don't apply, and third-party data typically is not something that's available in those platforms as well. Then you get into the hybrid CDPs that, for the most part, what we've seen is they were initially built for B2C, but have been adding B2B capabilities over time to try to support both sides of the business. And so with that transformation, they've started to add some support for third-party data, enhanced, use cases that are around third-party data, like some enrichment, finding people, prospecting, et cetera. They've added, some capabilities around segmentation, of course, and then integration into some of the more B2B traditional channels on top of the funnel, whether it be CRM or marketing automation. However, the integrations, as we noted in our experience, it's about pushing segments, not necessarily pushing all the profiles or the underlying data to those marketing automation or sales systems. So you can certainly activate in those channels, but you can't necessarily support all those deep end-to-end operational use cases where you need that profile data as well as all the underlying information to really optimize from that perspective. And so with that said, you can see the top row here with B2B CDPs. It's essentially, the most robust as it relates to these key categories and supporting the end-to-end customer lifecycle or buyer journey, because it can activate segments, profiles, data across the entire funnel to really drive growth and efficiency. Now, just to provide another perspective, we don't expect you to just take our word for it. We've included some additional resources, which I'll call out at the end. This is actually based on a CDP scorecard that Forrester New Wave released as they were evaluating B2B standalone CDPs in Q4 of 2021. Top row, you can see there represents LeadSpace. We've grouped the rest of the vendors here into the different sort of categories, as we just explained. Those that are primarily B2C, they're at the bottom, but have started to add some B2B capabilities. So they are certainly in the B2B spectrum. The hybrid, those that already have B2C, B2B, and they're kind of a mix of having supported both sides from a platform perspective, but typically started on the B2C. And then you got your B2B pure player uh, in the market as well. So again, we have resources we'll share with you guys afterwards, so you guys can take a look at that yourself. So what makes B2B CDPs different? Fundamentally, we boil it down to two key solutions we like to talk about: active profile management and active funnel management. These solutions are really driven to help organizations find, create, and accelerate closable business again and again, and really do it by design, not accident. So, what does that mean? Starting off with active profile management, again, this is a bit of our point of view here. For us, it really means being able to build and maintain profiles uh, dynamically on an ongoing basis over time. And that starts with, being able to ingest and activate any of that critical first party data that exists within a client's data set. Combining that, in this case, LeadSpace offers 30 plus different data sources from a third party perspective to really combine with that first party data as a starting point. And then lastly, there's the ability to be sort of an open platform and activate other third party data sources that clients or prospects or you might already license. So the idea is wherever you might need to buy data, you should go buy that data from different providers that can drive value for your organization. But if you can simplify how you create profiles and integrate into your overall tech stack, it's going to make it much easier to actively manage these profiles with less effort and ultimately more robustness in terms of the completeness of the profiles at the end of the day. The second part is, being able to just unify profiles is step one, but being able to apply models, analytics, and analyze what's happened really can help you get those actionable insights you need to make better insight-driven decisions on what to do next. And, as I mentioned earlier, it can be starting with, understanding your buyer TAM with a great degree of confidence and accuracy, and then understanding how you should prioritize that TAM, how to spot the ideal buyers, who's potentially in market, and really double down on them at the right time. That's really going to drive a better return on those investments. And then it's the notion of being able to activate these models and insights across the entire funnel, whether it be driving awareness through closing complex enterprise sales cycles to cross-sell, upsell, and retention. So what does that mean from a business impact? At the end of the day, generally speaking, B2B CDPs should help you improve across the entire funnel. In this case, these are some of the key call outs we see here specifically at LeadSpace, and some of the metrics our clients are seeing as far as top of the funnel engagement increasing because they're able to be more targeted and precise with how they build segments in the first place and be more consistent with how they reach out with the right relevant content at the right time, really increases the likelihood of people engaging. Then it's once they engage and they're about they convert, all people that are leads are not equal. It's about identifying those that work at the right companies, that might have a buying cycle happening, are the right persona. And by being able to do all that, we can really help drive, identifying 25% of the leads that could drive the majority of the revenue. The next step is, okay, we know who to route. How do we route them? Who do we get them to? And how can we do it automatically with accuracy? This is where the operational use cases come into place, and being able to get that lead to the right rep and ensuring they can follow up in minutes versus hours can really increase the likelihood of converting that lead into an actual opportunity. And as you'll note there at the bottom, the type of increases our clients are seeing as far as qualified ops. With that said, just want to close with a couple thoughts around, this was a lot we covered here, and what you should really consider as you think about what is the right CDP for your business. So it should always start with business priorities first. And, what we recommend is, you should always clearly define, the company priorities and the bigger picture strategy before starting a vendor evaluation, so you can take into consideration, the near term, midterm, as well as long term use cases and strategies to find the right partner that can ideally meet sort of all those requirements. Furthermore, you should definitely define these key use cases and prioritize them based on, the potential business impact you think it could have in areas you need to address most importantly. And then ensure that you sort of set up success metrics for those expected outcomes and compare them relative to your current benchmarks, so uh, it's easy to justify the value of this investment and prove the ROI when the time is right. And the last part we'll leave here with is, the different capabilities. Now, this is a list of capabilities that's pulled directly from the Forrester B2B CDP report that I referenced earlier. These are the sort of 10 categories that they've outlined. 7 are really around, product functionality or platform capabilities, and the other 3 are around kind of where the platform's going, the market approach, and the execution of kind of the roadmap. All I think are very important. And at the end of this session, actually at the bottom of the screen, there's a couple of links included where you can find a link to the report on the Forrester New Wave CDP report, as well as a webinar that one of their analysts, Katie Linford, gave around the space and their research and findings through this entire evaluation process. In closing, I'll leave you guys with this. At the end of the day, and this is sort of LeadSpace's tagline here, it's all about helping companies grow better individually as a company, and a lot of it is by helping find, create, accelerating closable revenue, doing it by design, eliminating a lot of the manual inefficiencies, the tasks that nobody really wants to do, so you can focus on the revenue generating activities at the right place at the right time, etc. Here's my information. Hopefully you guys found this insightful, learned a couple of new things. Would love to continue the conversation further. Feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to our marketing team, go to our website, because we would love to connect and learn more about your specific use cases, and would love to share more about how we might be able to help. I know there's only a minute left, so while we did get some questions that came in, what we'll do is, instead of addressing them now, and to be respectful of everybody's time as we close this session, we'll go ahead and take all the questions and follow up with you guys individually to answer those questions that came in throughout the session. Once again, thank you all very much for attending this session. We really appreciate it, and have a great day.